I'm Dean Newlund, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition.
Well, I think the way I would describe this next conversation with Sherry Shannon-Vanstone is really about the kind of resources that are out there that many of us may not know. Some of it might come into the area of research. Some of it might be able to come into the area of what we should be funding in terms of new businesses and startups. And some of it might also come into the area of what should be aware of when it comes to how organizations can best utilize, which seems to be the big topic these days, artificial intelligence. You know, it's so important, but I think a lot of people are still not quite sure of all the things that are out there, what should be focusing. So Sherry, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Really looking forward to this conversation. Would you just give us a kind of a brief paragraph overview of who are you and what's your background and what's the thing that's the burning platform for you that really we should be digging into?
Well, thank you, first of all, for this opportunity to be with you today. Sherry Shannon-Vanstone. I am a serial tech entrepreneur, having had successes in both Silicon Valley and in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor, which is equivalent Canadian of the Silicon Valley. I was with a cryptologic mathematician with the U.S. government, went to Silicon Valley after that to a startup, made my way up to Canada. I'm an advocate for women in all areas, women in STEM, women in leadership, and women in investing in every area, young and old. And what is my why right now is I really like to be a connector not only of, I meet people and they say, can you connect me to this person? Or can you think of a person? But also in my job at my company, Profound Impact, that's our mission, is to connect great people to do great things.
So tell us more about Profound Impact, about what it does. You had made some really interesting comments prior to this recording about the number of dollars that are out there, the number of dollars that are being wasted. Tell us about that and what kinds of things could a business owner or somebody who works for a large organization or maybe a startup, what would they want to know relative to the information that you have?
So I'll tell you just a few minutes about the inspiration for Profound Impact. I had mentioned that I'm a serial tech entrepreneur, having had successful exits. My last exit was in 2017. I sold a company that my late husband and I founded. I sold it in 2017 to Robert Bosch Group, which is a leading tier one automotive provider. And we did my company, TrustPoint. We provided information security or cybersecurity for the connected and autonomous vehicle. So when I sold my company, I thought that was it. I had been doing this for a while, but I got inspiration from my late husband in that he was a researcher at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario. He was also an entrepreneur. He spun out of the company, which became highly successful. We did all the security for the BlackBerry. And every cell phone today has my husband's technology in it. 450 patents. But he started as a researcher, getting funding from federal governments, provincial governments, and industry partners. And you could see that what he did was so impactful that if it hadn't been for Scott Vanstone and the technology that he developed called elliptic curve cryptography, and we will not get into that today.
Yeah.
But we would not have the smartphone that we have today.
So
yes.
So the funding piece obviously is a big through line of this current conversation. Are you saying that even outside of the nonprofit arena, whereby most people would say, well, you need to find a grant, we need to find some funding because we can't support our mission without that, for-profit organizations and so forth. Is there funding there that we may not realize? And is that sort of the open your mind up to another potential? And am I right on that, Sherry? And if so, where do we go? I mean, if I'm a business owner, large or small, and I'm a for-profit, I've never thought about getting funding. Where do I go to get any of that information?
That's a great question, because when I go back to what Scott did, he spun out a company out of the University of Waterloo, and that would not have survived without that funding. So he had the academic funding, he had the funding from industry partners, and some funding requires industry partners. Industry may not know that, corporations may not know that, small and large, that some academic researchers need the industry partners. So yes, so there is funding out there. It could be matched most of the time. I won't say all the time. You work with the technology transfer office at a university, and so that the corporation can own the technology after the research is done, which may be or may not be important to you. I mentioned that Scott had 450 patents for Certicom. When BlackBerry purchased Certicom, it was 450 patents that they could use in an offensive and a defensive manner in their business. So yes, small and large companies, there's funding for, and many large pharmaceutical companies, you may have heard of this, they provide funding for researchers and also for industry and corporate partners.
So outside of the pharmaceutical industry and the tech industry, which I think one might go, I can see where there may be opportunities to get funding, maybe from an academic organization or from private equity or what have you. Are there funding opportunities outside of those two industries?
Yes, there's funding opportunities a lot in clean tech, green tech. And I call it tech because it could be packaging at McDonald's, because McDonald's has funding available. How can we improve
McDonald's?
Yes, they fund initiatives for finding better packaging that there's less, that's not as hazardous or whatever to the environment. So yes, there's organizations, there's industry, there's large industry that funds small industry. There's matching funding in governments and in foundations, private foundations, and also in known foundations like a community foundation.
It kind of reminds me of a family trying to find a way to get their kid to college, and they're going on websites to look for scholarship opportunities, and they fill out forms, they check boxes, and a certain list comes out to be able to say, go apply for support in these areas. Is that what your company does in a similar way, but not for?
Well, we do it in a different way. You don't have to do the search.
How does it work? How does it work?
So you would say your company, you would sign up with us with a specific project. Tell us what you're looking for. If there's specific areas that you want to avoid, you don't want to work with anyone from a certain country or whoever. You want to get funding from a specific area. Then what we do is, using AI technology, we go out and look for grants for you, or funding opportunities for you. And if you need an academic researcher, we can match you with an academic researcher too. So we could do this TriMat. What you do is you send us your project, we start looking for you for that, and you give us your requirements, as I said, if you have any geographic constraints. And then we look for grants and funding opportunities that are applicable to you.
And how are you paid?
We are paid by if there's a university involved, we're an academic researcher, we're paid on that end. And usually there's an arrangement with the company that we get a percentage. Well, right now, though, we're doing it for free for the next 6 months. So
hurry up, everybody.
No, why we're doing it for free? Because we have a lot of industry partners, but we also have a lot of research and colleges that need industry partners. And we have funding opportunities right now. We want to clear them. And we're learning. Okay. Also,
so you're a startup.
We've been in business for a while, since 2018. But what we do have is new AI tools, and we're testing out new AI tools. And what we want to get is the perfect match. The match that gets you, the industry partner, the most money with the right research. Because at the end of the day, it's our goal is that you own that research and you can do with it whatever you want. You can commercialize it, you can patent it, you can move it forward to make you money.
All right, got it. So again,
so in order to do that, we need to fine tune our algorithms.
I totally get it. I understand why then you would do it this way. Would the potential include things outside of research? Like, I have a project. In order to complete this project, I need to hire 5 people. Could the money go towards salaries or for subcontractor fees, or is it really on the research side?
It depends on the grant.
Depends on the grant.
Sometimes you do not need an academic researcher.
So it could be like so this is fascinating. So what would, a company want to think about before coming to yours? Like, what's your recommendation if you work on find out what your project is, figure out what the scope is, what's your recommendation for anybody that's listening to this and go, I may want to do this. Sherry, what's my first step?
Your first step is to understand what you want to do and what you have the capacity to do. Remember that anything like this, there is some work involved in it, meaning that you do have to put together an application. You do have to work on what you're doing. So you do need someone within your organization that you can put as a project manager to lead this, because they will have to interface with the funding organization or I should say, with the researcher. And that means then you also have to sometimes talk to the technology transfer office if you use an academic researcher. Not necessarily if you go direct, just have a direct funding opportunity. So you do need someone I'm not saying it's 100%, but you have to, if you're going to put in that effort, you want it to be successful.
Understood.
Also understand what you really are looking. If I'm a company that does packaging for fast food restaurants, and I come up with a new idea about how to make one that is biodegradable in, days instead of months, then think about who your audience is and how you're going to present it to them, because the funding organizations want to understand the impact that you're trying to achieve. Is it an environmental impact? Is it a societal impact? Is it a research impact? So you have an economic impact that's important too. So you have to know that yourself. So understand what you want to get out of it, how it's going to increase your business. I'd say if I get this funding, I'm going to be able to do what? Just like if you're raising money with the VC, you say, what are you going to do with our use of proceeds? So you have to be really clear about that. And most people will have that in their business plans too, right? It's not new things they have to make up. This is part of their core business plan.
So if somebody were to go to your website, is it a form or application that one fills out and that follow the bouncing ball, answer these questions?
Yes.
Essentially? Okay.
Yeah. So it's called an intake form. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm fascinated by this. So what is you and I were talking before we started this conversation, and you gave me some statistic that kind of just surprised me. You said there was a certain percentage of all funding that doesn't get used or goes wasted. What is that percentage?
It's estimated that it's 30%. And there's $300 billion a year globally available for research. So this funding's out there in multiple areas, as we just discussed. And it's through inefficiencies, overhead, and just waste. I'll put it all under waste. Inefficiencies and overhead and funding that does not get used. It's estimated that it's $30 billion. And our goal go ahead.
Meaning that there was not even an application for it. We've got a pot of money and we've got 30% that nobody's even come to ask for.
Well, some of that is true. Some of the funding is not allocated. Some of the funding is allocated, but the projects do not result in a positive result. Now, I want to say this: researchers know that if I have a theory about something,
Yeah.
Doing the research, I might prove that theory right, but the theory wrong. It still is research, and it still is valuable to know that. But
Right.
what if the work never gets completed?
Yes.
So you wasted research time, you wasted some funding, and then that goes back into a pot that may or may not be allocated. So it's and then also the inefficiencies in themselves, and how many people do you need to, at the funding organization, to give out this funding, to vet all the applications. So I'm talking in general inefficiencies too.
Understood. And again, I just want to make this clear. Tell me if I'm correct on this, that it's not just about research that the funding would support. It could be other things regarding the project itself.
Yes.
Okay, got it. So, and then we're talking about VC funding, we're talking about government funding, we're talking about grant funding, foundations.
Yes.
Okay, all of that is in this pool
VC funding is not in that pool.
Okay, that's not what you're pulling from.
VC funding is in the trillions of dollars.
Yes.
Okay, just to let you know, to differentiate, because VC money is, the investor comes in and investor gets a part of your company. I'm talking about non-dilutive.
Yeah, right. So you're not going to lose equity. But does your process connect people to that resource as well, the VC funding, or not?
Not at this time. We are
not yet. Okay. Stay tuned.
The VC firms. Yes.
Okay, very good. That's fascinating. And so 30% is just a wild number that doesn't get used. I just think that there's so many. I mean, we work with a fair amount of nonprofits, both in social services as well as in healthcare. And then we work with a lot of other larger companies and small companies that are in the for-profit area. But I don't think most people even think this way, It's that doesn't even come up in conversation. I think probably, obviously, on the medical side and the nonprofit side, a little bit more, but I just don't think that people have a concept around the fact that there's money out there that we're not using.
Yes, there's an association administration in Washington, D.C. just for small businesses.
Yeah, right. I've heard grants. Of it. SBA is one of them, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So I think maybe some companies know about that. They may not understand the breadth of it, but even the other ones that I just want people to realize that what we do at Profound Impact is to find something that you wouldn't find on your own.
Understood. Right.
Okay.
Well, and even before that, Sherry, is what I'm trying to get people to think about is the mindset that it may even be out there,
Yeah. Okay.
Even before they go into the action of trying to get it on their own, right? That's what you're doing. But even just like open up to the possibility that there's something out there that you didn't realize, I think is really important. You mentioned the fact that your process utilizes AI, and I wanted to touch upon that a little bit. So if we could pivot, if we could, generally speaking, this is a big topic. Everyone seems to be, wrapping their arms around. Is like, okay, I know AI is here. There's some people who are afraid of it. Some people find it a great tool. I personally find it to be quite useful in a lot of things. And I'm just probably a baby when it comes to my understanding of what's out there. But in general, for an organization, mid to large, say, you're a manager, you're a leader with a team. I mean, when it comes to the tools that are available now, are there some that stick out for you that they should be conversant in, understanding of, training their people on?
Yeah. Some are as simple as your CRM.
Got it.
And
customer relationship management. Yep.
Yes. And Salesforce, HubSpot, all of these, they're already using AI tools that take your emails and just plug it right into your CRM. So you may not even know you're using AI.
Yes.
When you are, and so a lot of this is about making you more efficient and giving over to the algorithms and the applications, AI applications, so that they could take that off of you. And so you as a human being can do the things that really require thinking and the heavy lifting, I call it. So I think any company should look at their workflow and what they're doing every day and just ask the question, would an algorithm or computer application or algorithm, could they possibly do it better than we can? faster and more efficient. And that so I don't need to hire that person. And that's what we even do when we work with universities with profound impact. We want to make their research administrators, because they have people that are dedicated to finding grants and funding for the researchers, to make them more efficient and effective. So think about that. I think every company could just look around and look at your processes. And I think board of directors should, be involved in this too. They should know enough about AI. I'm not saying become an expert in it, but there's executive courses. I just took one at the University of Waterloo, and it gives me an overview of it. And it was like 4 or 5 weeks, a couple of hours a week. But it gave me enough. I'm not an expert, but it gave me enough to understand. When I talk to my team, I know what they're talking about. When they talk about a prompt in a large language model and how it can be utilized here and there, and which ones are the better ones, because there are different ones out there too. There's not just one. ChatGPT and OpenAI has some, but there's lots more out there. And so I'm just saying that I love it. For in our case, we said ingesting 150-page grant is something I don't want my people to be doing.
No.
But an algorithm could do that.
Yes.
And just like this. And they could pick out the important, deadline amount, eligibility requirements,
absolutely,
those kind of things, and do it better than a human being can. And then
a lot faster.
Faster. And then also going out and finding a researcher that matches with this, and also an industry partner.
I get it.
So find in your processes, and we're doing that. Even my company, we say, what in our processes could we give over to tools? Some that are already out there, and if they're not, going out, search and find the tools to find it. Now let's talk about what people are concerned about with AI. AI, the large language models, are modeled on data, and many of them have taken just internet data and just fed it all in. Right. There are specific large language models that are trained specifically on a different set of data, or a data set, they call them. And that's when you have to really look at it. If you're looking for general workflow things, you may not be concerned about this. But if you're doing the Chat GPT, and you might give, now organizations, OpenAI, and they're part of other organizations that have been doing this, is that they don't allow the Chat GPT or whatever to answer certain questions or answer in certain way. Although the large language model was built on everything that's on the internet, good and bad, they've had some people in the post process. So there's people involved too.
Of course.
You ask the Chat GPT something, and then there's people that vet that answer in general, and then they say, this, we can't, no, that's not, you can't say that. So this is what people expect. They call it the black box. What, garbage in, garbage out. People are concerned that all the prejudice is all the biases that society has.
Yeah,
is in this large language model. But remember,
First Amendment stuff too. Yeah.
So there's some human beings that have been involved in that too.
Which is what is. I think people get concerned about that. Then do those human beings have the right to be able to speak to the populace around what is acceptable and what's not acceptable? And then you get into First Amendment stuff. It's like, wait a minute, garbage in, garbage out. If we all know that, then we have to be responsible to the content that we just got from ChatGPT, and maybe do some fact checking or come up with our own. I was talking to somebody else about it. Says ChatGPT is great. You spend 20% of your time doing the prompts. The other 60%, it'll generate some answers. And then you still got to spend another 20% going back and editing it and making sure that it's in your voice and accurate and so forth. I kind of like it, to me personally, just to keep it open, because as soon as you start to say, well, this small group of people is going to decide what the algorithm is, now you have a problem, because then what if we don't agree with those small group of people,
And the good thing is, if you don't agree with those people, there's another large language model out there that you may agree with. So you may have to do some of your own homework here.
Totally get it.
Yes. And then, of course, there's also some that people go, what about my financial data? Well, the banks, large banks, and even Bloomberg did their own large language model. So they don't use, they don't necessarily, they control what data is going into their large language model, how it's being trained. So think of this when you're looking at it, is that it's not just one large language model out there.
No, I get it. There's many out there. That's a great point.
ChatGPT is a huge one.
Right.
There's others out there. And for you, most of us do not need to go back to that for our processes, because we're not necessarily, for my workflow process, I want a large language model that helps me with that process. It's not necessarily making ethical decisions for me. It's not moral decisions for me.
Got it.
And so that's how do you utilize it? It's number one. If I was a Supreme Court justice, I don't think I would be.
Well, that's right.
Some of these things for
human wisdom.
Yes.
Human wisdom, and hence the title of this podcast. A little bit of intuition goes a long way.
Yes.
So let me go back to something, if I could, that you'd said earlier, which had to do with the funding. If I repeat back of what I remember you saying, if you were to come up with your project, you go to your website, you fill out this particular intake form, and all of a sudden it starts to connect you to all of these different potential resources if it's appropriate. Great. Is there a corollary or a similar process that you know about there where a company would, like you said, let's come up with a list of all the processes that we could hand over to AI at some point, come up with that list, and can we go to a source, input in all those different types of internal processes that we could hand over to AI, and it would generate the list of those tools that we could use all in one place?
Yeah, I would say the large consulting firms are doing just that.
But I'm asking you, there isn't a site that that has yet been developed.
No.
By the way, anybody out there, would you please create one? We want that. Our little company, as small as we are, we would go to that right now. And I think a lot of other people would go to that right now to say that would be useful. There's a business opportunity right now that somebody could take on. But that's the thing, is because there's constantly new things happening, it would be hard to keep up on it. But nonetheless, if that could be a business in and of itself, just doing the interface, much like you are doing with funding, somebody else would do with AI and needs for, processes improvement within an organization to marry those two. So anyway, if you ever find a place like that, please let me know. In lieu of that, I suppose we got to do our own research and keep asking questions. But it would be nice for all of us, based on your recommendation, is to come up with that list internally.
Come up with a list first, and then you could say, okay, let's say maybe your accounting firm or could even direct you to some tools that they may know of, because part of this is about more efficient workflow, maybe your ERP or your CRM, or say, okay, go to your CRM company and say, this is part of my process. Is there any of this part that you can handle? And so that would be where I would start right now. Maybe some of the tools you're already using, because this is happening so quickly. We know this. At December 2022, I did my first interaction with ChatGPT. I asked him to write a paragraph about my late husband, Scott Vanstone. He was published hundreds of papers, had 450 patents, a lot written about him, and it was pretty accurate. And I asked it to do a paragraph about me. It knew I was a cryptologic mathematician. What it did was say things it hallucinated because there was not a lot of data about me on there. So remember, you can make up some stuff.
Right.
But that was in December 2022. Now look at where we're at.
Oh.
And so much is going on right now. So I would go back to my suppliers today, or the vendors that you're using, and saying, how are you going to implement AI? Or how are you implementing it to help me be more efficient?
Yes, I think that's a great idea. So again, create that list, go to your suppliers. What do you know? Keep educated on what's going on with AI. And there's a thing that I think we often have to remember is that we don't know what we don't know. I was, we've got our company that's based out of Phoenix, which they are the hotbed, it seems, of driverless cars. And I'm driving all over Phoenix and I'm going, oh, there's another one of those driverless cars. And they got people in the back sitting there on their iPhones and nobody's in front, and it's a little disconcerting the first time. And after a while, you don't even pay attention to it. Who would have thought couple years ago that we should put on the list of our process improvement areas that we would not be driving a car again.
Yeah.
To get our employees around or what have you, right? Well, who would have thought that? Because we don't know, we don't know. And that's the thing that I think is important based on what you're saying is stay educated with this stuff because it'll open up your mind to what is possible. There's something right now on your list that you think is always going to be a human-centric item for them to do. And in fact, maybe at some point it's not. Much like driving a car, we thought was always going to be something we would be doing. And at some point, maybe we won't. I was talking with my niece whose son is fairly young, and we realized he may never have a driver's license.
Yes.
By the time he is 17 years old, there may be no need to drive cars. Is that wild? It's just like
yeah. And that is a huge possibility. And that really, it changes how we view transportation. And
absolutely.
Now I'm a car addict. So I really love my cars. So I'm a little bit, I'd have to let go of that. What is a car? Why it's there? It's there as to get us from place A to B. But now, so people in my generation, maybe we may struggle with that. But the young the millennials that work for me, many of them don't have a driver's license. Many of them don't.
No, I know. Yeah. Well, Sherry, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I really picked up a lot of interesting things about what you said. Again, I love the idea of having my company even and other companies think about two things. One, what sort of projects would you like to have some funding to support? Go to your website and see if there's some connections that you might be able to make. To coming up with a list of processes that maybe at some point we could hand off to AI. What would they be? Start keeping educated on that. But the last thing I wanted to ask you, two last things I want to ask you before we close up. One is, again, how do we connect to you? And since you mentioned cars, what's your favorite car?
I have a Lamborghini.
Oh, gee whiz.
I know.
A Vericon or which one?
No, it's a Vericon. And I know people look at me, with my age, they look at me and they say, is that your husband's car? Or is that your son's car? I said, no.
It's mine. No, you can get out of my way. Thank you very much. Well, actually, my son's a caraholic too. I mean, he, my phrase is not his, but it's that he just loves, he grew up with a car in his hand. I think he's always been fascinated by that. So he would probably relate to that. So again, your website is
profoundimpact.com, www.profoundimpact.com.
And then connect with you on LinkedIn. How would they do that?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. Please reach out to me.
Got it. Fantastic. So Sherry Shannon-Vanstone, Vanstone, correct?
Correct.
All right, good. Hey, nice to meet you and talk with you. It's been a real pleasure.
Great meeting you, Dean, and thank you for this opportunity.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.